We have seen troubling developments in Ukraine as the Russian attacks continue, and Ukraine's president is accusing Russia of war crimes. Military affairs analyst Col Brendan Kearney joins me now. Thank you for doing so.
It's a pleasure, Len. Happy to be with you here.
And Colonel, you've been to Ukraine and worked with NATO. Can you talk about how this has played out so far?
Well, I think to everybody's surprise, it is really reflected how poorly the Russian military has done in executing a really bad plan that is coming directly from Putin himself. We've been I think worldwide, there has been just absolute admiration for the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian military, and their willingness to fight hard in defense of their homeland. And the Russian military has performed abysmally. And I think that's the way it's going to continue to go here over the near future.
Yeah, let's talk more about that. We're several days in now. How do you see this unfolding in the coming days?
Well, I think we've seen the early indicators of the Russians reinforcing what had been their initial assault into Ukraine. I think I've mentioned before that the attack itself was not only poorly conceived, but the numbers of personnel that the Russians used to attack into Ukraine is completely off kilter as you look at how military operations are conducted. Specifically, I mean that usually if you attack somebody, your force ratio is anywhere from 2 to 3 times the number of defenders. And the Russian forces went in with dramatically lower numbers than there are Ukrainian defenders. So I think the Russians are trying to now correct that with increasing the number of forces they have in Ukraine, and while also trying to overcome some of the terrible logistics problems that they've run into at a point in the campaign that is extraordinarily surprising. You shouldn't have to stop offensive operations 2 days into an effort like this in order to resupply. It's amateur hour from the Russian military, which really surprises me.
And even with all of this, Ukrainian forces have put up stiff resistance so far, even though they are outgunned and outnumbered. Can you talk about their ability to defend?
Well, I think they've already given us an awfully strong indication of just how good they are. The Ukrainian military has a long history within the Soviet Union's military, a very proud history. They resisted against the German assault into Russia and into the Soviet Union in the 1940s, lost 1.4 million soldiers in that effort. And they look back at that effort with a great deal of pride. So that pride is being carried forward to now with a much smaller military, obviously, but it's well trained. A lot of their younger military officers have trained in Western military schools, including ours here in the United States, Great Britain, France, and other NATO countries. It's a country that is technologically proficient. This is not a third world country. This is a modern country that is fully capable of putting up a very, very strong defense using very, very sophisticated weapons. So I see them continuing to defend. Unfortunately, I see them taking additional casualties, both in the military and in their civilian communities. But I also see the Russians taking very, very significant casualties, which certainly is evidently affecting morale in the ranks right now, but is also going to continue to adversely affect the morale of the Russian civilians that are wondering why they're involved in this fix they've got themselves into.
What about the possibility for diplomacy here?
Well, I think it still exists. I'm one of those people that believes you keep trying. And I think under these circumstances, the Ukrainians are doing the right thing by meeting with the Russians. I think the Russians have a long history of being completely disingenuous when they first enter into negotiations. But I think we got to keep trying. I think the EU I think there's probably some other more uninterested actors outside of Europe. Israel was one that was mentioned. Maybe some in the Arab world or India that could become actively involved in trying to broker a deal between these two belligerents.
And meanwhile, nations are hitting Russia with tough economic sanctions. Will that be enough, you think?
No, I really don't think it's going to be enough. I think the economic sanctions are good. I think it's the right thing to do. But I think it's really going to be more of what the reality is on the ground, the pain that is being inflicted on the Russian military and also on the Russian homeland. You know, these families are starting to get the word about their sons that are not coming home or are going to come home in coffins. And that's going to play an increasing role in the morale of the Russian people. Same thing happened to them in Afghanistan in the 70s and into the 80s with the increasing number of casualties. When I was in Ukraine, there was a number of memorials that existed for the Afghan war, and they were heartfelt. So I see this now being transposed into Russia, and it combined the reality of combat, combined with sanctions, combined with other increasing pressures that may be brought in by the international community, will all help serve, I think, in the long run of bringing peace to this at some point.
Something we're all watching to see how it all plays out. Colonel Brendan Kearney, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Len.